This is the point of the video. What happens when you spend down your RSPs to defer CPP? Is it worth it to spend your RSPs in order to defer your CPP? Or should you just take CPP when you retire? In this video, I'll show you exactly that situation and why my client decided to defer her CPP, even though she's going to be retiring in the next 6 months. Okay, in this situation, my clients are married, they're 62 years old, they're from BC, and we'll call them Brian and Carol for the sake of this video. They each have defined benefit pensions. Carol's is a little bit smaller, Brian's is a little bit larger, but even with those pensions, it's not enough to meet their income need, so they've been saving above and beyond what they're contributing to their pensions already, and they have just over $600,000 in RSP savings right now. And now Carol is planning to retire soon, but Brian plans to keep working until about age 65. The thing is, in their case, they just paid off their mortgage, and so they don't have as much cash flow need. And so even though Carol is retiring and going to be living off less income from her pension, they can still make it work with her pension plus Brian's income to meet their income need. But when Carol submitted her paperwork to her employer to start the retirement process and begin picking which pension options she wanted, they gave her paperwork to apply for CPP at the same time. I've never seen that before, but in their case, they were suggesting that she should take her CPP to align with her pension. She mentioned this to me and I said, well, let's model out a few scenarios because you don't have to take it yet. You can take it pretty well whenever you want between age 60 and age 70, and the difference can be massive. CPP timing is one of the biggest needle movers in terms of your retirement income, and the choice is fully yours with baked-in guarantees. So modeling it out is actually very effective, and we can do that with very real numbers. As a refresher, the value of CPP deferral is that you get a higher inflation-adjusted amount of money for the rest of your life. But the drawback of CPP deferral is that, well, if you got to live on something, you got to spend some of your own money to make up that difference. So now that that's all out of the way, let's hop over to the software and see what this looks like in Brian and Carol's case. Okay, so here's a chart of their investments over time as they spend them throughout retirement. So you can see the last couple of years of Brian working, they keep going up because, again, we don't need to start withdrawing from them just yet. And then once we get to retirement here, it starts to go down like this, and they start spending down their investments. Very, very common thing to happen. So this scenario that I'm showing here is factoring Brian and Carol taking their CPP at age 65. Again, very common for a lot of Canadians, regardless of when they retire. And in this situation, it looks okay. They're spending down a lot of their investments, but they don't project to run out. This is using just a straight line rate of return in this case, so there's no variance baked in yet. And so we don't have a ton of wiggle room. I'm going to show a much more advanced version of this in a second. But right now, there's only a little bit of retirement cushion there, and we've got a very low volatility resilience here based on this plan. So as things stand with the default of taking CPP at 65, spending your investments down to help meet your income need, everything is looking reasonably okay, but let's see if we can make this any better. So Carol's employer was suggesting that she should take her CPP now. Again, she's 62 years old. So off screen here, I'm just going to adjust when she takes her CPP date, and you can see live how that changes. So it's going to recalculate here. And in this case, it's showing recommended. Obviously, I'm not recommending that, but this is just how the software shows it. This line here now shows that with taking CPP now, she has a lower income for the rest of her life based on taking CPP early. And in that case, if you got lower income, that means you need to spend more of your own money. So most people think that by deferring CPP a little bit, that means that they're going to run out of their own money. It's like, well, you might, I guess, but depends on your own situation. So in this case, by taking her CPP early, they would project to run out of money. And that is before their life expectancy. Of course, if someone passes away early, this looks different. There's a variety of situations where this could look different, but we're just using baseline assumptions here to see how this would look just compared to a different scenario just on CPP timing. Now, is this the absolute end of the world if they run out of investments at this stage of life? Probably not, because they still have their defined benefit pensions. They do have their old age security and CPP amounts. So they have income, but they don't have any investments left, as the projection shows here. And so in this case, they would project to have less money to give to their kids as part of their inheritance. Maybe that's not a priority for you, but anyways, just as a comparison here, this is how it looked if she were to have filled out that paperwork that her employer gave her to take her CPP earlier. In this case, it probably doesn't work out in their favor. There's a few scenarios where I guess it could, but on the surface here, it's not necessarily a great outcome that we would be able to recommend. Okay, so now what happens if we go the other direction and defer them even further out to age 70? Now, both of them are taking CPP at 70, and now what you have here is a bit of a kink in the chart, because this is what happens. This is the point of the video. What happens when you spend down your RRSPs to defer CPP? Well, in this case, of course, you have to spend quite a bit more. So for these years, you would have fewer investments available. But once that higher CPP amount kicks in, again, it's inflation protected. So if you have a higher amount, also inflation protected, it goes that much further. Then from there, their investments pretty well, they stay reasonably flat, or a lot more flat anyways, along the way, because they just don't need to withdraw that much from their portfolio. Okay. So this looks pretty compelling here, because now, I won't move my screen around so I don't mess it up again, but now instead of taking their CPP at 65 and having just a little bit of retirement cushion, again, that's on the back end if they live longer than expected. And in this case, now we've added about 5 years of retirement cushion, maintaining their same lifestyle, but we've also increased their volatility resilience at the same time. We went from a low volatility resilience up to a high resilience. And so now let me show you what that looks like once we factor in a little bit more real world volatility into the portfolio. Okay, so now we're taking a look at what happens once we put a little bit of real world volatility into the portfolio, and we see how likely the portfolio is to actually succeed over time or run out of money. And so I pushed everything back to the baseline of where we started, of taking CPP at age 65. And if you remember how that looked, it looks okay. And in this case, okay, again, what's happening here is that behind the scenes, the software is running 1,000 different simulations of what the future could look like in terms of rate of return, volatility, and the order that the rates of return happen. And over here, this is where we get quite a few instances of running out of money at that age. Okay, so that's where we see red. Now, they're not 100% chance of running out of money at that age. No, it's not. And so overall, we still see like a good capability score. Like it's fine, but we could maybe do a little bit better. So again, let's go backwards and see what happens if Carol were to take her CPP at age 62. And here we can see down at the bottom that the median outcome is actually negative. So that means that out of 1,000 different versions of what the future could look like, the middle one and all the ones that are worse than that means that you run out of investments at your life expectancy or before, just the life expectancy that we baked into the plan here. This is age 90 in their case. And just for reference, both of their parents have lived well beyond 90. They're both in really good health. We have no reason to believe in their case that they would live less than that. It could totally happen. You and I have both seen situations where people have passed away younger than that, of course. But in their case, as far as prudent planning goes, we're planning for that as the ballpark life expectancy for them. Okay, so you can see how once we put in some real world volatility, the middle result doesn't look very good. However, it doesn't mean it's a guaranteed chance of running out of money. You probably can't see that on the screen there, but there's, if we take a look at the whole range of potential outcomes here, between the 25 and 75% of results, if you think of a bell curve, like it kind of goes like this, that middle chunk that kind of cuts off the extreme ends there. In this case, the back end of that middle chunk is still negative, so you'd run out of money in that case. But if things go better than expected, they could still have over $500,000 of investments at that point. Of course, if we go really extreme here, it could go all the way up to $1.5 million. This is rare, but in the realm of possible. I like to plan for that middle result because we've factored in a variety of different scenarios. I don't want to be too overly optimistic and have the worst case scenario happen. I'd rather plan for something that's likely to happen more than anything on the exact extreme ends of that spectrum. Let's go back the other way and let's defer CPP out to age 70. Okay, now I've pushed it back out to both Brian and Carol taking their CPP at age 70. And in their case, the plan is much more resilient to volatility. It's not perfect. There's still definitely a reasonable chance that they don't have investments if things go particularly poorly. But that middle result ends up quite positive in this case here. And so across the spectrum, we can expect a much more positive range of outcomes by deferring CPP to age 70 in their case. That doesn't mean that they have to, but right now, taking CPP, as far as I can tell, as far as what their objectives are and what their income needs are, and everything that's specific to their unique situation, it doesn't give me confidence to say that she should apply for her CPP now. And at the very least, we should just put it off and we can make that decision later. If that ends up being 70, great, but we can also reevaluate over time as the world changes, as their income need perhaps changes once they get to retirement, and so on and so forth. There's so many things that can change. But right now, based on what I can see and what I've shown to the client, is that making a decision to take CPP right now at 62 doesn't make sense for their situation. The decision to take CPP at 62 or 65 or 70 is really unique based on your circumstance. In this case, my clients had a pension, they had some savings, and their income need was specific to them. If you want to see how this decision is made for someone with a much larger portfolio but no pensions, you can watch this video next.